Hello, comrades. Cheers. This is yerba mate. This is how Che Guevara got his caffeine. There were points where during the revolution they would run out of, caffeine. Sometimes they would run out of tobacco, but not really, because they were Cuba's main crops were sugar and tobacco, and they were liberating the peasant farmers who were growing the tobacco. So Che had asthma, even though he chain smoked cigars. But there were points where they would run out of caffeine. So when raiding the bourgeois houses, the land of the plantation owning, essentially slave owning oligarchs who were overthrown by the revolution in Cuba, they would raid their houses for yerba mate, the caffeine, this caffeinated form of tea, basically. And they would find like stores of it, like gallons of it, just giant crates filled with yerba mate. And Che drank the crap out of it. Because it's easier than coffee, because you have to brew coffee every time, right? But yerba, I put the mate in there, and then you pour hot water on it, and it's like, you can do that like 10 times. Well, that's what they say. They say you can fill it up 10 times, and you'll still be getting caffeine. I'd say it's closer to about 5 or 6. Maybe I'm doing it wrong, before it completely loses its flavor, and you feel like you're not getting anything. But yeah, I'm trying to do less energy drinks. I say that even though I had a Bang energy drink this morning and then just drinking this on top of it. But we'll get there eventually. Got a lot of stuff to do. Need a lot of energy. Salute to the chat. Salute to you, William Turnbull. Thanks for being here with us. Ides of Marx. Welcome back, comrade. I know, Ides of Marx, you said that you would be down to cut the streams up for us or give timestamps for the stream. If you're still willing to do that, maybe for this stream, that would be fantastic. No pressure, though. Feel free to just sit back and relax. Hey, Where Pilgrim, how are you? Everyone's favorite mod and YouTube member, double whammy. What's up, Jacob? Everyone's favorite TikTok mod. May have part of my favorite previous live stream. Yeah, definitely, Jacob. We will check that out for certain, my friend. Let me pull up that video Jacob sent us so we can watch it later. Little TikTok action. Jacob clipped us, uploaded one of the clips of our streams. Thank you very much for doing that, Jacob. Helping to get the good word of Midwestern Marx out there. Speaking of which, make sure to like, comment, and share the stream. Subscribe on YouTube or follow on Twitch if you haven't yet, or both. That helps boost the show, helps boost our channel in the algorithm, which, of course, is probably suppressing socialist content. I don't really know, but hello, Bazi. Got so many YouTube members in today. So I don't know how many viewers we're going to have today because we've had a live broadcast up on our YouTube for like 24 hours. On Sunday, I drank a bunch of caffeine because I thought no, it wasn't Sunday. It was Friday, I think. Yes. I drank a bunch of caffeine fairly late at night because I thought I had a homework assignment, but I didn't. It turned out it wasn't due until yesterday it was due. So I'm like, I'll just do a stream instead because I have all this energy. Well, I started the stream and our freaking Wi-Fi cut out. So now we've just had this broadcast up on our YouTube, just sitting there, not doing anything, for like 24 hours. But yeah, so I don't know if everybody got a notification that we were streaming right now or if people still think it's the broadcast from last time. But it is not new broadcast. Sorry about that. Sorry to anybody who got their hopes up or who waited in the broadcast room for a long time. I will try not to let that happen again. But there's nothing I could do because I figured out I couldn't turn the live off for my phone. I couldn't do the broadcast for my phone. I needed to get on StreamYard. And my Wi-Fi was down. And it was down because there were like tornadoes that swept through the Midwest. So like there was pretty much no option for me to turn off the broadcast. Hello, hello. Never heard of this drink. Interesting way of opening the stream. Got to give y'all a little history lesson on revolutionary caffeine, I guess. Eddie, who you got this weekend? Who's fighting this weekend? I can't remember now. I was just watching some MMA videos this morning. Didn't Anthony Pettis fight recently? I saw Marlon Moraes got crushed. That was sad. Jose Aldo fought Jeremy Stevens to a draw in boxing. All these freak show fights, man, are crazy. There's all these poor old fighters who just freaking never made as much, or never saved money or made a ton of money when they were fighting, and now the only thing they know how to do is fight. And they're like 40 years old and doing celebrity boxing, and it's sad. It was a good April Fool's prank, Eddie. There you go. I forgot it was April Fool's Day when I started that live stream, so there you go. It was just my April Fool's Day joke that I did on accident. Eddie, what's up? What's up, Cade Grenade? How you doing? I bought Marx's Concept of Man in the Communist Manifesto at half-price books this weekend. Let's go! Congrats, Cade. Your first Marxist theory. You're building your bookshelf. We're all very, very proud of you. Cade, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Cade, but I believe he sort of came to Marxism through the stream, or found Marxism and socialism through the stream. And now look at this. Guy's buying his own books and reading his own theory. So awesome. Love hearing that. Nothing I love hearing more than that, to be honest with you. That's freaking awesome. So yeah. Yeah, it was weird. I know. I wish Taibbi would have checked how much our content is suppressed and not just the conservative content on the Twitter machine. Good point. Good point. I've been thinking that a lot. I tweeted at Elon Musk the other day, like, why is Scott Ritter still banned? Scott Ritter's this guy who, former UN weapons inspector, left in the lead up to the Iraq War, after the Gulf War, and, kind of exposed the U.S. empire, was critical of the war in Iraq, the claim that Iraq had WMDs, which he said was never true, all that stuff. And now he's talking about the war in Ukraine. And he's talking about all the horrible things that the U.S. and NATO and the NED and all the arms of Western finance capital are doing to perpetuate this conflict, and wage a proxy war against Russia, while claiming that it's just an act of aggression, an unprovoked act of aggression from Russia and Putin. So Scott Ritter's been debunking this, and not only been debunking that and exposing the West at every turn, but also giving like really good military analysis. So different than what I would do. Like most of my analysis is geopolitical or political economic. His analysis is like strictly military. It can be political and economic too, so I shouldn't say strictly military, but he's talking about like the military battle plans and the formations and how many troops were lost and, what kind of weaponry each side has and, how much ammo do they have for that weaponry, military analysis. So, yeah, he's banned from Twitter though. So shout out to Elon Musk for bringing back free speech, gotta love it. Finally been on time for one of those streams. Hello, Silver Fishing. Glad you could make it. Welcome to the stream. Hello, I bought Luna Oi's translated book, Curriculum of the Basic Principles of Marxism-Leninism. I'm so excited to read it. She even signed it. Oh, that's cool. I didn't even know Luna Oi did a book. That is interesting. We're going to talk about a Lenin book today. Basically, I don't know if it's the same as Luna Oi's book because I haven't read Luna Oi's book, but Lenin breaks down the three component parts of Marxism, or the three sources of Marxism, which is basically an introductory Marxist breakdown that is just so concise, so accurate, so incredible, which is that was Lenin's. He did that better than anybody, I feel like. Well, Mao as well. Mao's up there too, but he's just so easily able to break down these complex topics and break down Marxism so that anybody can understand it. So, just wondering what stops you from being a Maoist. I love Mao. I read Mao all the time. I just don't think Mao himself would support a lot of the modern, like, Maoist third worldists. Right? These people who are like, we can't have a revolution in the imperial core. The American working class isn't a real working class because they're American or because they're white, and because our history's, mostly a history of imperialism, which in exploitation, which of course that's, the history of every capitalist country. So there's like this tendency with people who call themselves Maoists, like, we support the Shining Path in Peru, this group that was, might as well have been CIA backed. I don't know if it's been proven that they were, but, would like murder peasants for not agreeing with them and really destroyed the legacy of socialism in Peru among the workers. And there's this trend of modern Maoists who support Gonzalo and the Shining Path, and it's just extreme ultra leftism to the point of even being a caricature. And they, reject modern China is the main thing. Whereas if Mao was alive today, based on every single thing I've read from Mao, which is a lot of what he wrote, he would support modern China. So I was crossed on a Friday night and happy for the stream, and you blue-balled me. Going to change my account to Midwestern Capitalist and destroy you. I'm sorry, Cade. I didn't mean to. It wasn't my fault. There was literally a tornado that came through my town, and it took out the Wi-Fi. It was geo-engineered by the CIA, manufactured by the U.S. government. Google Operation Popeye. This is what happened. Oops. I forgot I changed my screen to this screen. Google Operation Popeye. The military cloud seeding project carried out by the U.S. Air Force during the Vietnam War. They know how to geoengineer the climate. So the CIA knew we were about to do a super lit stream, and they sent tornadoes. So I'm sorry, Cade, but I promise I'll make it up to you. And thank you very much for the super chat there. Luna translated one of her college textbooks from Vietnam. That's cool. That's a great idea. I had a buddy who lived in the same area as me that I met through the Bernie campaign as communist, who taught in Vietnam for a while and lived in Vietnam. And yeah, very interesting. I've been thinking, like, I've always said it would be very interesting to look at their curriculum, like their core curriculum for how they teach Marxism, even at the elementary level, even at like the most introductory level, to see what they've devised at a systematic level for teaching the philosophy. Which it's just such a different situation in Vietnam or China or Laos or Cuba, any of these countries where they have, a dictatorship of the proletariat established, where they're moving towards socialism. Because they're trying to educate the masses about Marxism. They can do it systematically. Whereas here in the U.S., Marxism has been systematically removed from the education system. So it makes the task of learning it really difficult. There's a bunch of different sects of Marxism that go back and forth, but it makes it hard to, know which one is right until you've read a whole bunch of Marx yourself. There's all these people telling you that Marxism's ridiculous. There's all these people saying you can be a Marxist, but you can't support any Marxist country that's ever existed. And it just makes it much, much harder to learn. And you have to be much more thorough with your reading. So Eddie is reading my recommendation. This is what I sent to all my Marxist curious friends. It's short and accessible. You bet. Yeah, I forgot that you recommended this to us, Sam. So thank you. Hey, pay to meal. Yeah, Sam, who's a YouTube member. Shout out to all the YouTube members and Patreon supporters of Midwestern Marx. He recommended that we read Lenin's Three Components of Marxism. And I thought that sounded like a really cool thing to read on stream. So I read it pretty much as soon as Sam recommended it. And it was just as great as I thought it was going to be. I mean, pretty much everything from Lenin is great and concise for the most part, but this is really something special. The three components of Marxism. I'll pull it up here actually quick so that we can take a look at it, and then we'll get started with that actually. So let me present this screen here. So here we have it on Marxist.org. I'll put the link in the chat in case anybody wants to check it out. Great work. Like I said, basically summarizing Marxism, breaking down Marxism into its component parts to help people understand it in a way that's incredibly concise. Look how short this is. You could sit down and read this in like 20 minutes. So I totally agree with Sam, who sent this in originally, that it's a great thing to show people who are new to Marxism. I can't lie. When I first read the book, I barely understood what Lenin is saying. Do you have any tips on understanding theory better? Well, I'll explain it to you right now. Excuse me. I just choked on snot after I said that. But yeah, I mean, there's no tips for understanding it better except read it more. And I mean, yeah, we'll figure it out today for you. What? Ultimately, okay, so this was published in the Bolsheviks academic journal in St. Petersburg, and this is before the Bolsheviks took power of the government. So this is before the Russian Revolution. The Bolsheviks are publishing these academic peer-reviewed journals. The name of it is like Prosveshchentia. I don't know. It's very Russian word, but it basically meant enlightenment was the English translation of this journal that the Bolsheviks were publishing regularly. And, you know, this is what we're trying to do with the Journal of American Socialist Studies, right? The fact that the Bolsheviks had an academic journal, a place where Marxist academics could publish even in, you know, a capitalist system, in a system dominated by the czarist monarchy, who would exile and ban anything that threatened their power. The Bolsheviks had this outlet where academics could publish. And if you look at the Journal of American Socialist Studies with Midwestern Marx, it's basically the same thing. It's a peer-reviewed journal, an academic journal that, you know, professors and academics can put on their resume that they published in, and they can write anti-imperialist Marxist works at, you know, the sort of academic, or with that academic intellectual rigor to it, and have a place to submit it, because a lot of that stuff is blackballed from the mainstream academics or at mainstream academia. A lot of Marxist and, you know, especially Marxist-Leninist papers will be rejected just for being Marxist-Leninist papers, and for journals not wanting to attract, you know, the kind of controversy that comes with that. And they just would rather publish more mainstream basic stuff that they know is gonna draw eyeballs. So we want to provide an outlet for Marxist scholarship, the same way the Bolsheviks did, and that's why we feel this kind of stuff is really, really important. So shout out to all the people who have said that we're not real Marxists because we have a book for sale for $10 that we hardly make any profit on. Because the Bolsheviks did the same thing, and I'm pretty sure they were real Marxists. They were successful in seizing the government and creating the world's first workers' state. So just trying to follow in the footsteps of our revolutionary history, or our revolutionary leaders of the past. So eventually this journal unlike the Journal of American Socialist Studies thus far, was censored in 1914. And this was right on the eve of the Great Imperialist War, World War I. So we see how censorship always increases in times of imperialist aggression. Censorship always gets ramped up when the capitalist empire is attacking some area, is trying to lie the public into some war, like the czars were with World War I. So seeing similar things going on right now in the United States, where censorship is increasing. The NED, the National Endowment for Democracy, this arm of the U.S. State Department, is just published an article encouraging business interests to get more involved with censorship. You have the TikTok ban. You have former NATO operatives and intelligence operatives working at TikTok, as reported by Alan McLeod of Mint Press News. All these different increases in censorship that I think we've all recognized. Scott Ritter banned from Twitter, like we said. Shout out to Elon Musk for promising to bring back free speech and then not doing it. Typical capitalist move. But anyways, throughout history, we see that censorship always increases during an imperialist war. Lenin starts this by saying we should expect that Marxism would be attacked by bourgeois scholars, that these mouthpieces of the ruling class would attack Marxism. But, Marxism has proved its correctness in that the attacks from these bourgeois scholars are they're almost always, they rarely ever engage with Marxism on its merits. They rarely ever engage with the actual substance of Marxism. It's almost always some kind of smear. It's almost always Marx thought we would create a utopia. And then you read Marx's works and there's full books written about how we can't have a utopia and how we need scientific socialism. We need to build socialism over time. We can't do it overnight. But what these bourgeois scholars are doing is essentially serving the ruling class, genuflecting to the ruling class because they know that's what's going to make them money. Like we said, Marxist works, anti-imperialist works get censored, banned, and blackballed. So it creates a theater for bourgeois mouthpieces, for simps to the ruling class to become well-paid academics. Just look at Jordan Peterson. Just look at how much money he's made and how much he's blown up since he sold out and started just doing speaking engagements for right-wing NGOs and libertarian think tanks. Thank you very much for the $5 super chat, Sam. He says, wish I could stick around for another segment, but I got to run some errands. Have a great weekend, y'all. For sure, Sam, I will be sure to upload this section here where I'm talking about Lenin as a highlight on our YouTube so you can see it. But thanks for hanging out and thanks for the super chats. Really appreciate you supporting our project in that way. So Lenin says that one of the great things about Marx is that he answered a lot of the questions that were raised by thinkers before him. So he didn't just, formulate his own questions and try and answer them in his own way, which, could have been, which lends itself to idealism. But instead, he read what the previous philosophers had said and tried to answer their questions using materialism, using the scientific method and using Hegel's dialectic, which we'll talk about later. But at this point, Lenin gets to the three component parts of Marxism, right? What this whole piece is named after. And what are these three component parts? The first is German philosophy. The second is English political economy. And the third is French socialism. Okay, those are the three component parts, and Lenin's going to go through and break them all down one by one. But we have the realm of philosophy with German philosophers like Feuerbach and Hegel, most importantly. English political economy with famous English economists like Adam Smith and David Ricardo. These are who are known as the classical economists. Nowadays, neoclassical political economy is popular, which basically emerged in response to Marx. And I recently wrote an article for MidwesternMarx.com systematically dismantling or systematically attacking neoclassical economics from a Marxist perspective and explaining why it's stupid. And the last part is French socialism with thinkers like Fourier. Proudhon, was Proudhon French? I believe he was. But basically, these French utopian socialists, you also have folks like Robert Owen, who were saying at the time that we should move to a socialist society, a society where the means of production are owned collectively. But they had a lot of utopian or idealist conceptions on how to get there. So Marx is going to try and take French socialism and make it scientific using German philosophy and English political economy. So something interesting that Lenin says here explicitly is Marxism is materialism, right? Which we always hear Marxism is dialectical materialism, which it is, but ultimately you can just call it materialism, right? Because it's the belief that our ideas are a reflection of the material world, and we mediate our own life, humans do, through interacting with the material world. We use our labor, our human activity, to interact with the world, to do agriculture, to develop industry and manufacturing and things like this, and produce the things that we need to survive, to produce our own life. So human life is mediated through labor and through relation with the natural world. And thus, the way to study the natural world is through the scientific method, is through materialism, understanding that, us ourselves are material beings. We have material brains that can think and interact with the world. And like I said, mediate human life through the world. We can interact with the world in order to produce ourselves. And we can also observe the world using our senses, right? So materialism believes that what our senses show us, what they tell us, that's real. There is matter that can be observed. And the best way to observe it is through the scientific method, through experimentation and study, forming a hypothesis, conducting an experiment. And based on what happens in the real world with that experiment, we can say, was our hypothesis true or false? Was our idea that we had originally true or false based on what the real world has told us, right? We can't just say, I have this idea and I'm going to say it's true, right? Materialism says, no, we have to question every single idea. And the way we do that is by observing the real world around us. So Marxism is ultimately taking materialism to its logical conclusion, to its final point. So Lenin says also that bourgeois philosophers and ideologues essentially need religion and they need idealism to debunk Marxism. So like I was saying before, very few bourgeois ideologues like Jordan Peterson actually engage with Marxism, actually engage with the substance. Instead, they lie about what Marx said. They make things up to strawman and knock down these strawmans of so that they can say they've debunked Marxism, right? This is because Marxism sticks to materialism. Marxism sticks to the materialist scientific method. So the only way to break that down, to debunk that or show it's not true, is to use idealism, which is to be wrong. Not to say Marx never got anything wrong, and Marx was 100% right, because the material world can change, right? Or the material world might show us something different than what Marx said, and in which case we need to update the philosophy, right? Because Marx is not an idealist. He believes in updating and changing the philosophy based on what the material world shows us. But I forgot what I was saying. Oh, yeah. But the method itself, the materialist method, the only way to disprove that method is to be idealist and therefore to be wrong. And even while the bourgeois ideologues heavily rely on religion, you even have these folks like Sam Harris, who's an atheist, but he believes in this universal form of morality. He basically believes in this idealist form of magical morality that all humans share, even though he doesn't believe in a God. And that's idealism. It's not something that's provable. It's not something that's shown in the material world. It's this idealist framework by which Sam Harris can see the world. And that's what the bourgeois philosophers base their philosophy on. So Marx takes Hegel's system, and Feuerbach also, who was a German philosopher that followed Hegel and really wasn't that famous outside of Germany until Marx and Engels came along, and they thought he was pretty special. but he still had some idealism in his philosophy. But Marx takes Hegel and looks to turn him on his head, is the saying that people always use, which is to make Hegel materialist, to take Hegel's dialectic, his science of logic, his philosophy, and get rid of any and all idealism. Get rid of any and all statements or principles that Hegel made that cannot be proven by observation of the material world. So dialectics, which is the philosophy of the natural world's development, has been shown, or Hegel's dialectic, which is the philosophy of the natural world's development, has been shown time and time again to be in line with the real world, with what's shown in the natural sciences. So what comes out of the field of science in terms of the natural sciences, physics, chemistry, things like that, has time and time again confirmed the materialist dialectic. So Lenin here uses the discovery of radiums, electrons, the transmutation of elements as three different scientific discoveries that had just come about at his time that confirmed what the dialectic says about development in the natural world. Engels' Origins of the Family, Private Property, and the State, which we have part of a reading guide up for now on YouTube, and we'll finish that at some point, has been shown to be way ahead of its time by modern anthropological research. So it's basically applying the Marxist method to anthropology and prehistory, going far back as we can to see how human societies developed from the very beginning. And through applying dialectical materialism in his analysis, Engels was able to make all these discoveries and predictions that have been proven correct by modern anthropological research. So historical materialism gives a harmonious theory of economics, politics, and social sciences. This is something else Lenin says. It allows you to see these things in their interconnection rather than seeing them as isolated. These are all things, and dialectical materialism allows us to see all these things as things that stem from the production of human life, right? They all stem from the productive base of society, which we'll talk about more later. So by example, changes in production or economics led to the political revolution in France, an uprising of the workers, which led to a completely new economic system, right? So changes in production, how the necessary means of life and goods that we all need to survive are produced, lead to changes in politics, changes in philosophy, changes in everything else. Production, interaction with nature through labor is how we mediate our own life. Like I said, that's how the human species keeps itself going, that and reproducing sexually. So for Marx and Engels, that is the base of society. And everything else in society sort of stems from or is deeply connected to the method of production, the relations of production, the division of labor in society, which is used to organize production. So capitalism evolved out of feudalism, which was a distinct mode of production with a monarchic political system. It didn't just show up one day. This is one of the other major principles of dialectics. Capitalism didn't just drop out of nowhere, right? It's a historically existent system that developed out of another system, right? So new economic and political systems don't just show up. They don't just come out of nowhere. They develop out of the previous economic and political system at a certain stage of development. So in Europe, this was feudalism, which eventually transitioned to capitalism with events like the French Revolution, like we said, but more so with like the Industrial Revolution and the advancements in technology, productive technology, which eventually led to revolutions and a new mode of production. But if we can understand that every mode of production, every economic and political system developed out of the previous one, then we know that capitalism will develop into socialism, right? Capitalism isn't going to last forever. It's going to develop into a new kind of system, which will not just come out of the sky, but will emerge from capitalism, from the ruins of capitalism. Lenin also says that dialectical materialism teaches us the political system is a reflection of production and the class relations. So like I said, everything having to do with production, the production of necessary means of life, and how those are organized, which the relations of production under capitalism are capitalist and wage labor. Capitalist owns the means of production, doesn't work, but appropriates all of the products of labor while not inputting any labor himself. The workers input all of their labor in exchange for a wage, but their product is taken by the capitalist, the person who doesn't work. Dialectical materialism also teaches us that man's ideas are a reflection of the material world, like I said earlier. So a lot of times, we think that we've come up with original ideas or just come up with ideas on our own. But really, all of our ideas stem from the material world in some way. Even if they're wrong ideas or wrong conceptions of the material world, they stem from the material world nonetheless. So that is German philosophy, the first component of Marxism according to Lenin. Moving on next, we have English political economy, with the most famous English political economists, like I said, being Adam Smith and David Ricardo, the classic political economists. So after dialectical materialism, Marx's philosophy identifies that production is most important, right? Production is what pushes human life forward and causes human life to evolve and change constantly and causes new systems to come about. Marx realizes he needs to study economics, right? Because economics is the study of production. How do we produce things, and how are the things that we produce distributed among society? How is the division of labor decided in society? So Marx starts reading the classical political economists, deeply studying the political economists who came before him. So this goes back to what Lenin was saying in the introduction about Marx not just making his new ideas or formulating his own new questions and then trying to answer those questions, but he tries to answer the questions of the past, right? He takes the English political economist, looks at the questions that they were trying to answer, and then looks at all of their research and all of their theories in trying to answer those questions and says, okay, here's where they were wrong, here's where they were right, and answers the questions for them better than they could have themselves using dialectical and historical materialism, his philosophy from the last section. So Marx takes the labor theory of value, which was laid out by the English political economists Smith and Ricardo, not invented by Marx himself, which is a common lie that you'll hear from bourgeois ideologues. I'm pretty sure like Peterson and Ben Shapiro claim or try to claim that Marx invented the labor theory of value. Totally absurd, untrue. Anyone who says that doesn't know what they're talking about. They need to study economics, as the right-wingers would say. But labor theory of value is pre-Marx. Marx just took the labor theory of value and brought it to its logical conclusions, right? He took Ricardo and Smith's analysis of capitalism based on the labor theory of value, said this is where it's wrong, this is where it's right, and then answered all these new questions and all these questions that Smith and Ricardo had posed previously using the labor theory of value. It's kind of hard to explain how Marx takes the labor theory of value to its logical conclusions unless you read Capital. But like Capital is 3 volumes. It's so many pages, almost 3,000 pages, because it's such a thorough analysis, right? Adam Smith and David Ricardo don't have 3,000 page books, and not that the number of pages, determines the correctness of your book or the correctness of your theory. But Marx attempted to analyze every single aspect of capitalism, right? So he looked at at the labor process, the point of production, where value is created through labor, and then follows that value all the way through the capitalist system. So the worker produces a product. Where does that product go? Where does the value of that product go? How is it distributed? Once the capitalist sells his product for money, how is that money distributed? And basically tries to map out the entire capitalist system using the labor theory of value by tracing the value that is created in the labor process. So Marx shows that what economists see as relations between things that are being exchanged are actually relations between people, right? So what many times we see as exchanges of commodities or even the exchange of labor power for money, the payment of wages, is actually a relation between two people, right? We see it as our boss just giving us a wage and we have to do a certain amount of labor to get a certain amount of money. We see it as an exchange, but really it's a relation between two people with a specific place in the economy. Your boss is lording over you. He administrates production and collects what's produced. And your relation to him is as his worker. He gets to control you for however many hours in a day he's paying you for, or underpaying you for, actually exploiting you for. And it's really a relation between people that becomes a relation, or that appears as a relation between things once labor power is commodified. Once human labor is this commodity that's sold in a market, wage labor, which is what your labor is under capitalism. There's a market for labor. Everybody under capitalism has to sell something in order to survive. So if you own the means of production, if you own the tools, you can hire workers to work with those tools and then produce something which you can take and then sell for money, sell for profit. But if you don't own the means of production, if you don't own a factory and a bunch of machinery, the only thing you have to sell is your labor power. We call it labor power once it's in the market, once it's sold for a wage, once it's commodified. And once wage labor has been sold, the worker essentially gives up his human activity. He gives up his time for 40 hours a week or whatever it is. So it's not an exchange of inanimate objects like what it appears to be, right? It's not just a market exchange. It's you selling your time, selling your activity, literally selling your life to someone else in order to survive in the system. And also, even the inanimate objects that we exchange under capitalism, right? Like this pen is a product of labor. So ultimately, everything under capitalism or everything that is exchanged on the market in capitalism is a product of labor, or it's labor itself. So it's human activity itself or a product of human activity. And here how we see how these relations between things, how relations between people appear as relations between things, right? We have to organize labor and the products of labor and the distribution of the products of labor some way in society. We have to do it somehow. And the way that we organize it determines the relations between people, the different people in society. But under capitalism, where everything is commodified, including human labor itself, these appear as relations between things, and the people just appear as individuals, right? We're all individuals. You can choose to pull yourself up by your bootstraps or not. Success means you worked hard. No questioning the system. The system is universal. It's the way it's supposed to be. And whoever buys the most commodities in this system wins. These appear as, or the system appears as a relationship between things. It's actually a relationship between people. So Marx also shows that capitalists, in his analysis of economics and English political economy, he shows that the capitalist mode of production is based on the production of surplus value. And this is the cornerstone of Marx's analysis. Because surplus value proves that there must be some kind of exploitation. And if you think about it, like say in healthcare, the example that I always use is the opioid crisis. Right? The pharmaceutical companies who lied us into the opioid crisis, getting hundreds of thousands of people killed, did so to make a profit. They did so to make a surplus, to create surplus value. So even though it killed hundreds of thousands of people, even though opioids were supposed to be a healthcare product that make people healthier, and they had the opposite of that intended effect, they're still being sold, they're still being marketed, even though we know all these things, because they make surplus for the pharmaceutical industry. So surplus value is the only thing that capitalists are focused on producing. Surplus value is the point of the capitalist production process, right? Under socialism, we would produce things based on the useful effect that they have, right? So if a healthcare product is killing hundreds of thousands of people a year, you don't sell it. But under capitalism, which is based on the production of surplus value, it's up to those pharmaceutical companies. And if it makes them profit, they're going to do it. And they don't give a damn how many people it kills, which is sick, but that's how the system works. And they can just shrug and say, oh, well, I got to do what I got to do to make money. I'm just trying to make it out here and feed my family or whatever. I don't care if I got 100,000 people killed. Telling yourself that it's just a relationship between things, right? I'm just trying to get money. I'm just trying to exchange these opioids for money. I'm not hurting anyone. When really the pharmaceutical companies are hurting people. They're actively lying to the masses of society, claiming that opioids are less harmful than they actually are, and less addictive than they actually are, in order to make a profit. So it's a relationship between people. The people at the top, the people who control production and control the healthcare system, are lying to the people at the bottom, dosing them with opioids to make a profit. But it appears as a relationship between things. I'm just selling you these opioids. I'm putting these opioids on the market, and then I don't even have to pay attention to them. Who cares what happens after that, as long as I get my money back, as long as I'm making surplus value. So capital itself is created by the workers, but it also crushes the workers. And once capitalism is established, capital basically has a mind of its own. And, capitalists are nothing but personifications of their own capital. They have to constantly, grow, expand, sell more and more and more on the market. Otherwise, they'll go under, right? So the decisions are being made by the capitalists. They're managing their capital, but it's based on whatever is going to get that capital to grow. They're essentially slaves to the capital that they own. So as capitalism spreads, machine agriculture spreads. The peasants start being kicked off their land and forced into the cities in search of manufacturing jobs, which are expanding at the time. Capitalism goes through these different stages of development that Marx goes to great detail in laying out in his analysis of economics. It starts with small-scale commodity production. Some commodities are being produced and sold. This leads to the formation of markets that develops into mid-scale commodity production, and then during the Industrial Revolution to large-scale industry, where you have these giant factories, these giant mining layouts, giant rock foundries and quarries. You have machine agriculture, large-scale industry. Machine-based capitalism is capitalism, the final development of capitalism that Marx looks at before he dies. And then Lenin will expand that into the analysis of capitalism in its imperialist, finance capitalist monopoly stage. And feudalism and the agricultural peasant economy are replaced by capitalism as these developments in machinery and these developments in production and these developments in manufacturing and machine agriculture go further and further and further. So the more that factories come about, the more that there are these manufacturing centers and these machines and these jobs based around industry in the towns, the more and more peasants are forced off their land and into the towns. Simultaneously, the capitalists are making more and more and more money thanks to these advancements in production. They're buying up more of the land. They're overthrowing the previously ruling class, the feudal landlords, and forcing the peasants into the cities because the land is being bought up by capitalist farmers who are going to enact machine agriculture. So in Europe, we see how advancements in production lead to changes in the feudal mode of production, in feudalism, which allow capitalism to emerge out of feudalism. So advancements in production cause a new economic system, a new mode of production to emerge from the old, which is what we talked about in the philosophy section earlier. So small-scale production is eventually destroyed in favor of large industry, which leads to monopolization and concentration and the domination over markets by just a handful of monopoly capitalists. And Lenin talks about this in detail in his book Imperialism, which we have a full reading guide of on our YouTube. Once the transition to large-scale industry is complete, and once you have these factories with tons of workers packed together like sardines on the assembly line, you have socialized production. production is happening socially. It's cooperative. You have a bunch of people coming together to produce one product as efficiently and quickly as possible. However, you have private appropriation, right? So the production of the product is social, but the product goes to one guy, the capitalist, someone who wasn't even involved in the socialized labor process, somebody who just hoards over the labor process and collects the products that come out of it. So capitalism actually creates the conditions for socialism. It creates the possibility for socialism because production is already social. We already work together to produce things. When you go to work, you have coworkers, right, who you cooperate with. So production is already socialized. It's just getting rid of the appropriation of those goods by private capitalists who are hoarding all of the wealth that our labor creates in society. So capitalism's development creates the possibility of collective struggle by these socialized laborers versus the privately appropriating capitalists. And Lenin says that the capitalist mode of production has conquered the world, but it's only a prelude to the triumph of labor over capital. Excuse me, I just burped. So yeah, that is part 2, English political economy. I guess I'll pause here if people have any questions. I'll pause and check out the chat real quick and see if anyone's got anything they want to ask or add here. Quite similar here in the UK. I am a carpenter in my 50s and I've worked in wrecked tendons in both arms. So I wound up hooked on codeine in order to keep me working. That's too bad. Sorry to hear that, Jason, but solidarity with you and your work and in your struggles with the healthcare system. Yeah, the NHS is not perfect and obviously constantly being attacked by the Tories who are trying to dismantle any kind of socialism or any kind of working class institutions that are set up or welfare programs or systems. It's hard to believe that socialism is inevitable. I don't know if it is inevitable or not, but it is because we're around, comrades, because we're going to make it happen whether they want us to or not. It's inevitable now that we're here. Thanks. At least they give me the codeine for free, I guess. Yeah, it's true. At least you don't eventually run out of money and stop being able to purchase it. And then you have to switch to the cheaper alternative, which is heroin, because that's what happens in America, or fentanyl. All right, moving on. The final component of Marxism, the third component, French socialism, French utopianism, which if you want to learn about this and Marx and Engels' direct critique of the French utopians, Socialism, Utopian and Scientific, fantastic book. Engels engages directly with the French utopians and with Robert Owen, that guy I was talking about earlier, who built this utopian socialist community or utopian workers community, who Marx and Engels criticize and say this is where Robert Owen went wrong, but they have great admiration for him. I think he was... essentially, he had the right idea. They just need to take his idea and make it more scientific, make it materialist rather than idealist. So as soon as capitalism replaced feudalism, many people recognized that it was simply a new system of exploitation, that there was simply a new ruling class that had replaced the kings and the monarchs who ruled under the era of feudalism and the landlords. So at this point, these utopian socialist ideas emerge. People recognize that capitalism is exploitative. Okay, what do we do about it? Well, we can have socialism. How do we do socialism? That was the question that they were asking themselves and, coming up with all sorts of different answers, some of them goofy, some of them more legit, but and Lenin says their main flaw was that they were desperate to convince capital that exploitation was immoral. They were desperate to convince the capitalist class to stop doing bad things, right? And this reminds me of like AOC or the Squad or the social democratic politicians in America who were like, we're going to go into the Democratic Party, we're going to go into Washington, and sure, we're going to cozy up to Nancy Pelosi and these other heinous war criminals and Wall Street investors / politicians. And we're going to convince them to do Medicare for all. We're going to convince them to end the wars. We're going to convince them to do socialism. And, really AOC isn't even fighting for anything in office herself. She's basically become a young Nancy Pelosi. But you're never, even if she was an actual socialist fighting for the workers, you're never, ever going to convince Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and all these ghouls to give up exploitation, to give up their capital. Because like I said, the capitalists are slaves to their capital. They're slaves to the market. They have to expand, and hoard as much wealth, accumulate as much wealth as they can. Otherwise, they'll go under. So there's no convincing the capitalists that exploitation's immoral and that we should try a different system. And this is what the utopians failed to see. They failed to see that the solution is class struggle. So this is the motor, the engine that drives the change in economic systems and the change in political systems. Struggle between economic classes. In the fall of feudalism, it was the capitalist class teamed up with the peasant class who overthrew the landlord class, the monarchs, the feudal lords. In the United States, the Civil War was the culmination of a class struggle. The northern industrial capitalists and the slaves largely joined sides, joined forces. Their interests became the same, and they were drawn into a class conflict with the Southern Confederate slave-owning plantation oligarchs. The plantation oligarchs eventually grew to the size where they were competitive with the northern capitalists, which drew the northern capitalists into the struggle. And of course, once the struggle broke out, the slaves knew who they were going to side with because their interests were obviously opposed to the southern plantation owners. And, the war wouldn't have been won without the slaves who fought for the Union. So class struggle and the Civil War culminated in the end of slavery, the end of a mode of production and its replacement with capitalism, a mode of production that developed out of it. So class struggle is what leads economic systems to rise and fall, and one economic system to emerge out of the other one. And capitalism is no different. So we can't be utopian. We can't create a socialist community or a socialist society tomorrow based on our own ideas of it, on our idealism. We have to engage in class struggle, material, real world class struggle in reality, in order to construct a new system out of the old. And this is why people are so ridiculous when they say that there's no real existing socialism ever. Socialism's never been tried, right? The socialist countries that have existed have been places where the working class was organized, fighting against the dictatorial capitalist class. They've overthrown the government, seized the government, and then tried to build socialism out of that, tried to build a new economic system. And all of these socialist countries, their economic systems have looked much different than Western capitalism. So to say that there's never been real socialism is idealism, right? You're looking at socialism as this utopian thing, as this thing that you invented in your head. And if the real world doesn't conform to it, then the real world is wrong, not my ideas. Rather than looking at socialism as a natural development that comes out of capitalism via class struggle and which needs to be constructed after being established. It won't just appear on its own in a fully developed form. So this is a quote from Lenin in this third part. He says, people always have been the foolish victims of deception and self-deception in politics, and they always will be until they have learned to seek out the interests of some class or others behind all moral, religious, politics, and social phrases, declarations, and promises. Champions of reforms and improvements will always be fooled by the defenders of the old order until they realize that every old institution, however barbarous and rotten it may appear to be, is kept going by the forces of certain ruling classes. And there is only one way of smashing the resistance of those classes, and that is to find in the very society which surrounds us the forces which can, and owing to their social position, must constitute the power capable of sweeping away the old and creating the new, and to enlighten and organize those forces in the struggle. So Lenin is basically pointing out here the futility of reformism, saying that there's always been reformists throughout history who think that the ruling class, whether it be the slave-owning plantation oligarchs in the American South or the feudal landlords and aristocrats in France that got their heads chopped off during the French Revolution eventually, in all of these systems, or in modern neoliberal capitalism, there's always been people saying, well, we can convince the ruling class to give us health care or whatever. There have always been social democratic reformists. And Lenin is saying this will never work, right? This is just pure idealism and, I don't know, trying to be polite to the ruling class, when in reality, new systems, new changes, and even reforms will only come about via direct class struggle, right? It'll only come about if the working class gets organized and seizes from the capitalist class the means of production, or threatens to take over the government and means of production and forces the capitalist class to give us some reforms in order to avoid revolution, right? The only way things change is through direct class struggle. It doesn't come from AOC going to Washington and saying, hey, Nancy Pelosi, can we please have a little bit of health care, please? 40,000 people are dying every year because Nancy Pelosi is going to say, fuck off. I'm getting paid so much money from the pharmaceutical industry. You think I give a shit about the 40,000 people who died because they couldn't get chemotherapy this year? The ruling class is vicious, exploitative, and like I've said, they're slaves to their capital. They're slaves to their own surplus value. They're never going to give us reforms. They're never going to give us a new system. The only way a new system can come about is through class struggle, which eventually culminates in a qualitative shift in the workers seizing power, or a new class seizing power from the old ruling class. So Lenin finally says here, the proletariat is the liberator of spiritual slavery that has afflicted all the toiling classes prior to the proletariat's existence. So here I think he's referencing Hegel's concept of spirit, which can be seen as a materialist concept. He's not talking about spirit in the religious sense, in the idealist sense. He's just talking about the development of humanity since humanity came into existence. And he's saying the proletariat seizing power and establishing socialism can bring an end to exploitation just exploitation in general among humanity. It can bring an end to the domination of one economic class over another. The domination of the class who owns the means of production, which throughout history has been the feudal landlords, the slave-owning class, the capitalists, and the toiling masses have worked under them. The proletariat can abolish this finally, which is liberatory for the human spirit in the Hegelian sense. And that's how Lenin ends this fantastic piece of Marxist theory called the three sources and component parts of Marxism. So here you go. We just made it through the whole dang thing. Pretty excited about that. If anyone wants to read it, here it is again on Marxist.org. Definitely a great read. Shout out to Sam Dixon for recommending this. One of the best recommendations we've had in a hot minute. So, yeah, that was fun to read. It doesn't take long. I recommend you read the whole thing. I broke it down as best I could, but you'll be in even better shape if you read it on your own. I am going to run to the bathroom and grab a glass of water quick. But I will put on a video of myself wrestling for you all. Welcome to the Midwestern Marks Intermission, the coolest part of the Midwestern Marks podcast, if you're a fan of Division III wrestling or Greco-Roman wrestling. What's a good video here? Got to find someone I beat up really bad. Oh, here's the one we watched last time, but didn't get all the way through. All right, folks, I'll be back as soon as I could possibly be back. Here's me kicking some guy's butt in Illinois. I'll be back again. Let me Dink. Oh yeah, turn him, baby. I almost get pinned in this match. This kid was not that good, but I got put on my back at one point. Which person is me? Never mind, it's the guy in purple. I was going to say, you can't tell? Yep, that's me. Doing my favorite move right now. There is a rival team that I found. I found out just recently that they have a nickname for me and my brother. They call us Trunks because of our legs being big and I guess looking like tree trunks. So that was a compliment. That was like our biggest rivals too. It was this college that's in the same town as the college I went to. Move your feet, Eddie. Jesus. See, that's why you move your feet. I knew this guy wasn't that good. Did you see his coaches in the background? Watch his teammate here. This kid's face is hilarious. Oh, of course it's gonna lag on me now. He's just like, oh, come on, Jeb. I can't remember what Josh, I think the guy's name was at wrestling. What if he's watching this? This is probably where he puts me on my back. Maybe not. Maybe I already got put on my back. All right. It's lagging now. That's that. I was actually about to put him on his back again, facing the camera. So maybe I should have let it keep playing for a little bit. James Ed Smith says, get him with the Cobra Twist. The Cobra Twist. I don't know if there's a move called the Cobra Twist, but there should be. I'm going to start naming. I'm going to name some move the Cobra Twist. Something rather peculiar happened the other weekend on my Instagram. I was reached out to by the Frankfurt chapter of the German Communist Party, DKP. I don't know why. Maybe it's because I follow a lot of their accounts. So that was interesting. That is interesting, Jacob. You should respond and see what they want. I mean, obviously, Frankfurt is kind of associated with the Frankfurt School, which we recognized was a CIA influenced, ruling class influenced pseudo Marxist effort, really. But that, of course, that's not to say the German Communist Party is therefore like the Frankfurt School. And there's a lot of left imperialism in Germany. Like the German Green Party is just freaking garbage. In support of rearming so that they can arm Ukraine and aid in the NATO proxy war effort. And Angela Merkel, of course, this isn't the Green Party, but Angela Merkel, of course, admitted that the Minsk agreements were never going to be followed. There was never going to be a peace agreement between Russia and Ukraine. It was just a distraction so that the U.S. could so that NATO could arm up Ukraine and prepare for war. So war was inevitable. So an uphill battle in Germany is what I'm getting at, basically. But it would be really, really cool to establish connections with some German communists if you have that option and that ability, Jacob. So I would respond to them if I was you. Matthew Smith, thank you so much for the super chat. We got all sorts of Smiths in the chat today. We had James Edge Smith. We got Matthew Smith. You got Eddie Liger Smith. Smiths of the world unite, baby. Thank you so much for the $10 super chat, Matthew. This is, of course, how we fund and make our project possible. Something like 60-70% of our fundraising is viewer donations. So if it wasn't for you guys, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing. Certainly not at the frequency that we're doing it. And we wouldn't be putting out the quality of content that we are with things like the journal. So hope you're having a good day, Eddie. I am, thanks to you and thanks to this stream. I'm having a great time. I just finished Black Shirts and Reds. Which Parenti book should I get next? What a freaking beautiful question. Thank you, Matthew. I can't think of anything I would rather be asked than this. Let's take a little look at the bookshelf, shall we? I don't know if y'all have noticed, but I'm right next to my bookshelf. I moved my camera over this way. I always felt like I was too far away from the books. Now I can just turn around and reach them whenever I want. How sick is this? So I like that you're looking for another Parenti book because Parenti is just so easily digestible, so fun to read. Great. Like when you're getting started with Marxism, just hammer Lenin, Parenti, and Stalin. You don't need shit else. And Mao. Like, you'll get to Marx and Engels. Sorry, Engels too. Read Socialism, Utopian, and Scientific. But you'll get to Marx eventually. And you'll get to Capital eventually. But if you get the basics from Parenti, Stalin, Lenin, Mao, and Engels, from these like 30-page pamphlets or short, easily digestible books that they wrote, and then you jump into Marxism, into Marx, you'll really understand Marx. But what should you do? I'll grab all my Parenti books quick that I have with me. I have more books than this from Parenti, but I'm not sure where they are right now. I would listen to his lecture about JFK, the JFK assassination, and the gangster nature of the state. If you want to know how much evidence there is that the CIA killed JFK, which is an insane amount of evidence. And I made a video about that outside of the JFK Memorial in Fort Worth, Texas, quoting Parenti, and it got deleted just like the rest of our TikTok accounts. Probably because of that. But I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, Inventing Reality is probably the next one you should read. And I don't have that on me right now. But Inventing Reality is a breakdown of the media, the mainstream media, entertainment media, news and politics media, and how they lied to us. It's essentially a better version of Noam Chomsky's Manufacturing Consent. Because it shows how they lie about existing socialist countries. It shows how the the propaganda that we're fed by the ruling class is built into the mode of production, right? Because the relations of production in capitalist society are the capitalists own the means of production, the tools, and then the rest of us work for them, right? So that includes the production of information. That includes the education system. That includes the media, both entertainment media and news media. So they're going to be able to control everything that we see, everything that we read, to the point where, like in the US, the people who read this book usually end up saying everything's a lie. Everything I know is a lie, because they see how thoroughly controlled every aspect of the information that we get is by the ruling class, including even academic institutions and outlets, even though I recommend reading academic papers and peer-reviewed stuff more so than just random articles, editorialized articles. But yeah, that's what I would read next, because it's so important living in the imperial core. When you live in America or the UK or one of these capitalist countries where they've been lying and getting good at lying about socialism for years and years and years and years, got to understand the media. Got to understand how thoroughly we're being lied to. That was the first thing that turned me into a socialist, really, was I had a professor, Dr. Dar, who now actually writes for Midwestern Marx, which is an honor for me. But he would have us do these media breakdowns in class where we would take an issue, we would look at what the mainstream sources said about it, and then we would look at alternative media, journalists, and academic sources. And I was always mind blown. I was like, how are they getting away with lying to us this much? I remember the first situation that I broke down was the genocide in Yemen. And I was looking at the outlets who were justifying genociding the Yemeni children and bombing their water sanitation facilities and shit. I'm like, this is insane. And all of these media outlets, if you trace where their funding's coming from, they're literally owned by weapons contractors. They are literally owned by people selling weapons, by people selling bombs. And they're continuing to genocide children because it makes them money. It allows them to sell bombs. And then the media is owned by the bomb sellers. So it just blew my mind. And that's what Inventing Reality will lay out. Sorry, I got to quit rambling about Inventing Reality. Black Shirts and Reds, amazing book. You've already read it. If you want to learn about history as a history of class struggle, I would read The Assassination of Julius Caesar, because it looks at ancient Rome through a class lens, which kind of in many ways proves the correctness of the Marxist method and proves the correctness of analyzing history as a history of class struggle. And it allows you to see it's not just capitalism, right? It's these previous historical and ancient systems that changed and developed and rose and fell through class struggle, as we were talking about in Lenin's 3 component parts of Marxism earlier. Also, this is probably Parenti's most relevant book today. I mean, Inventing Reality is too, but as far as mainstream political conflicts, and especially the war in Ukraine, To Kill a Nation, the attack on Yugoslavia. Because the US, IMF, World Bank, Western finance capitalists attack on Yugoslavia is what allowed NATO to expand further towards Russia's borders in the 1990s and early 2000s. Today, former Yugoslavia is now balkanized, cut up into all these different states, one of which is Kosovo, which is the place where there are more NATO troops occupying than any other place on earth. You hear about all the lies that America told to justify this, and the carpet bombing of Serbia and former Yugoslavia that targeted their industry, it also hit the headquarters of any socialist or left-wing parties, but it mostly destroyed their power plants, their electricity grids, their roads, their farms, anything that these countries could use to produce, which made them competitive on the global stage, on the global market, with American multinationals. So you see the real purpose of NATO's bombing of Yugoslavia, the real purpose of US, IMF, World Bank infiltration of Yugoslavia, and you see how NATO has continually pushed towards Russia's borders, right? Despite saying that they're an organization that sole purpose was to defend against aggression from the Soviet Union, they're carpet bombing former socialist countries or existing socialist countries in order to expand towards Russia so they can threaten Russia more. It's an offensive apparatus that serves imperialism that's constantly been provoking Russia and pushing towards Russia's borders, as is shown in this book, his most relevant book. So there you go, Matthew. Those are my recommendations. Hope that was a thorough enough answer for you about Parenti. I went like 20 minutes responding to that. So yeah, thank you so much for the super chat. Another super chat from another Matthew. We got 2 Matthew super chats in a row. What are the odds of that? Big spender here. $10 super chat. Thank you very much. That is legitimately a chunk of change. Really, 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 really appreciate that. Y'all make our project possible. Do you have any recommendations for books to read alongside Capital? Also, how important is it to understand the work of Hegel's philosophy when reading Marx? It's important. It's important. It's not the most important thing, right? You can read Marx, read Lenin, read Stalin, then read Hegel. But if you really want to understand Marx, if you truly, truly, truly want to grasp Marx at the most fundamental level, you have to read Hegel. And this is what Lenin says to you. You literally have to, because it allows you to see the historical development of the ideas that allowed Marx to exist and formulate his theory. And Hegel's also fun to read too. Like if you read, so like Carlos and I were talking about this, like Lenin's the 3 component parts of Marxism. He does draw from English political economists like Adam Smith and David Ricardo, as well as the French utopians. But when you read the work of Adam Smith and David Ricardo, it's so much worse than Marx's work, right? There's so much that they got wrong that Marx has to fix, right? So the things that they got right, he does draw from them. He does take them, right? But it's not like they had, it's not like Ricardo and Smith were 99% right and Marx got them the last 1% of the way there, right? It was like they were 20% right and 80% wrong, and Marx fixed the 80% that they got wrong. And then we say, Marx drew from the basis laid by Smith and Ricardo, which, yes, but also the real basis of Marx's theory was laid by Hegel, right? That's the real basis of Marx's theory, where it's like Hegel got like 90% right, and Marx took him the last 10% of the way there. Right. There's that famous saying that Marx stood Hegel on his feet. Hegel was on his head. Marx stood him on his feet. That doesn't mean Hegel was a pure idealist, right? Hegel was a proto-materialist, essentially. He was looking at the development of spirit, as he called it, or the development of human thought, human understanding over time. But he had an almost materialist way of doing so by looking at all the different ideas and the developments of those ideas and where they developed geographically, where spirit developed. And Marx basically took that and made it completely materialist, said that production and the material is what mediates the ideas, and advancements in production lead to new developments and changes in our ideas and our understanding. So Hegel is the real basis of Marx's philosophy and Marx's method, even more so than the English political economists, the French utopians, and these other aspects, these other components of Marxist theory. So if you really, really want to understand Marx, got to read Hegel. But it's not something that's like 120% necessary to understanding the theory. I haven't read as much Hegel as I'd like to. Carlos has, but that's his field, like I've read a lot more Parenti and Vijay Prashad and a lot of these political scientists than Carlos, and a lot more healthcare stuff than him by Marxists in the field of healthcare, because that's more my field. That being said, I think every Marxist should eventually get around to reading Hegel, even if they're not in the field of philosophy. Having at least one good teacher / professor is vital. Absolutely, Ross. That's a good point. And thank you for the $2 euro. I've been learning the currencies. I know what that symbol is now. Thank you, Ross. Ross is a super consistent supporter of our show, constantly giving super stickers and super chats. So really appreciate that. Thanks, Ross. I agree. That's why it's been really useful for me to have Carlos, one of our buddies that in undergrad named Alex, was really helpful for me that professor, Dr. Dar, that I mentioned earlier. You need people to help guide you because you're surrounded by a bunch of propaganda about Marxism. You're surrounded by a bunch of pseudo-Marxist ideas or pseudo-Marxist thinkers like Zizek, who are like, yeah, I'm a Marxist, but I support NATO's carpet bombing of Yugoslavia to destroy Marxism and socialism. And I also believe that the Soviet Union, who defeated Nazi Germany, were equally bad as Nazi Germany. It's Marxism while never, ever, 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 ever supporting Marxism in real life, in the real world, which is useless. I mean, it brings people away from, real Marxism, the real meaning of Marxism, the Marxist method. So you're surrounded by all of that in the West, in the imperial core. It's very, very helpful to have one or more people to guide you through it, people who are more well-read, more experienced than you, who can help. Or multiple people, right? You need at least a reading group, right? The learning process has to be cooperative and social because that's what humans are. We're cooperative social animals, right? It's going to be very, very, very hard to just teach yourself Marxism completely on your own, isolated from anyone else who knows or studies Marx. Sounds like a good way to go crazy, honestly. I know a guy who kind of did that. And he kind of did drive himself crazy, to be honest with you. How's it going, Eddie? Just got off work. I'm doing good, Dev. How are you? How is work? Hope you didn't get exploited too bad. Hope you got energy to listen to the stream, to learn some stuff. I know the capitalist bastards suck your physical and mental energy from you, but we're glad to have you. Very glad to have you. The Frankfurt chapter of the German Communist Party reached out to me to raise money to see so they can run some candidates for some upcoming state elections. That's dope and nice emojis, Jacob. Check out all those cool emojis you get from becoming a Twitch subscriber or a YouTube member there on the screen in Jacob's post. You got me in a singlet. You got Carlos reading a book. You got me with a beat up face and me on the Midwestern Marx logo. It's a lot of me, I guess, but that's very cool. I mean, I would do some research on the Frankfurt chapter of the German Communist Party before you end up giving them money, Jacob, but cool stuff that they reached out. What's up, Eddie? I just read Lenin's Imperialism. What else should I read? Cool. Did you watch our reading guide or did you use our reading guide at all? Did you find it useful? And if you haven't read Black Shirts and Reds, I'd say read that one next. Or Utopian and Scientific by Engels. Those are my two suggestions. F for the Twitch chat. Gotta love being a leftist in Kansas. Not a lot truly understand anything. True, but there's that inherent class consciousness. There's that inherent knowledge of the working class, that inherent kind of boss, that understanding that the boss makes $1, I make a dime. Matt Taibbi appears to be a right winger. I think he's a liberal. He is a liberal. I know he's a liberal. I'm friends with him on Facebook. He's a liberal, yeah. So I mean, I guess you can consider that a right winger or a reactionary, but yeah, he believes in like liberal ideals like freedom of speech, freedom of press, and I think he believes in like a welfare state, right? Like a social safety net or whatever. But he's basically like the Democratic Party isn't liberal anymore, right? The Democratic Party is the party of censorship, of no freedom of political expression, of controlling political speech and controlling elections. So there's no political democracy and freedom of speech anymore, which are main principles of liberalism. And Taibbi is someone who believes in these principles, is pointing that out and saying, look, the Democratic Party, the liberals are not actually liberal, which, yes, but this is what Marx predicted so long ago. He said you can have a democratic, or you can say that you have a democratic political system all you want, but the class that rules economically is always going to be the class that also finds a way to rule politically. And the capitalist class rules economically, so they're going to accumulate wealth. They're going to control the media. They're going to control the education system and all the information. They're going to control the elections via campaign donations. They're going to control the laws via lobbying and all these things. They have so many methods of using their wealth, their money, their power, their status to control politics. So you're never going to have a true democracy, right? You're never liberalism, so long as liberalism, which inherently means capitalism too, is never going to live up to its ideals. It's never going to have true freedom of speech for the working masses. It's never going to be a true political democracy. It'll always be a dictatorship of the capitalist class, the ruling economic class. So, it's always interesting or sometimes even funny to hear liberals be like, oh, there's no freedom of speech. Capitalism isn't living up to its ideals. The country isn't living up to its ideals that it set out in the Declaration of Independence or whatever. The First and Second Amendment. Like, yeah, of course. It's because the capitalist class, the dominant economic class, is going to be the class that controls politics, right? So unless, as workers, as the working masses, unless we seize power of the economy, unless we make the workers the ruling economic class, we're never going to have political democracy. Political democracy is impossible. There's never going to be freedom of expression or political expression and debate among the workers. So long as there's a class of capitalists accumulating and hoarding massive sums of wealth and massive sums of money. So yeah, that's my analysis of Matt Taibbi. I like Matt Taibbi. He's a great journalist. He has published a lot of amazing stuff. And, a lot of times there are people of different political persuasions than us who do a lot of great work. And it's okay to accept their work and read their work and draw what's good from their work and criticize what's not. Like, I'll criticize Matt Taibbi's liberal principles all day. Right? Marxism provides a critique of liberalism, so I can do that. But the Twitter files were also very useful for Marxists. So I appreciate him for doing that work, and I understand how courageous he had to be to do that. Like, the IRS showed up at Matt Taibbi's house. He had a single IRS agent. And I can't remember the exact details of it, but it was absolutely a threat. Right? They were absolutely showing up to say, hey, quit releasing these Twitter videos, these Twitter files. Otherwise, we coming for you. Good Sunday to you, comrade. Thank you, Blueberry Onions. Good Sunday to you. Happy Sunday. I hope you went to Sunday school and church. What do blueberry onions taste like? Have you seen Lord of War? I haven't, but I was curious if you have. I think it's useful fiction. And a Lord of War. No, I haven't seen that. Let me write her down. Interesting. Speaking of fiction, I'm probably going to do my first gaming stream tonight. I don't know if I'll be on TikTok or if I'll be on Twitch. But follow our TikTok accounts, Edward M. Liger and Ed B. Liger. I'll probably do it from the Ed B. Liger one, honestly. But I think I'll probably do it from TikTok tonight, and then I'll probably stream with Noah on Twitch tomorrow. But we're going to start doing some gaming streams, just casual, hanging out, talking politics, playing games, less rigid, less structured, less planned, and more just give you guys an opportunity to hang out with us, talk to us, ask us questions in a more casual setting, and also play some games because I know video games are popular, and I have a few games that I like. So I can't believe how aggressive and militarized your IRS are. In the UK, you just get a nerdy guy in a suit on your doorstep. I mean, that's what it used to be. Now they're talking about they're like, Joe Biden just signed a new bill to create 50,000 new IRS agents, and they're all going to have jetpacks. They're just going to be shooting around like, give me your taxes. Give me 50% of your money. And then if you don't give them 50% of your money, they just scoop you up. And they're like, we're going to jail. One day you're just going to be walking with your significant other and some IRS agent on a jetpack is going to come swoop them up for tax evasion. It's like they're militarizing the freaking IRS. Hey, what are you playing, LOL? Well, Noah and I will probably play Fallout 76, which I have to download. I'm going to download Steam right now because I have to get this ready. And then I'm also going to play, I'm going to play Dragon Quest 8. Hopefully my screen didn't just lag out there. Because that's just happens to be what I'm playing right now. And then I'm also going to play Final Fantasy just because I love those games. And JB of Revolutionary Blackout Network said he would play with me, which sounds super fun because I freaking love JB. I love hanging out with JB. He's such a cool person and a nice person, fun person to talk to and chill with. So I just feel like that's going to be so fun, even though those are single-player games. And I love those games. So, will you stream later on YouTube? What do you mean by later? I'm probably not going to stream the video games on YouTube. The Twitch and the TikTok will be where we keep the gaming streams just because I want the YouTube content to remain fully educational and a little bit more professional. And these gaming streams will be educational, right? We're going to talk politics and economics and Marxism just because that's what we always talk about. And I don't know any other way. So they will be educational, but it's not going to be like, here's what I have laid out to talk about today, right? It's not going to be like this. It's not going to be super structured, and I'm not going to have something that I want to teach people about and educate people about. So it's going to be a little bit more entertainment. So I just want to keep the YouTube strictly entertainment and education. And then TikTok and Twitch, I'm more okay with, having more entertainment-based content. So, which Final Fantasy? 7 and 10. Yeah, baby. The best ones. Could I react to that TikTok I sent you at the beginning of stream? It was a TikTok of myself. So it was a clip from this stream. So I don't know if it makes that much sense for me to react to myself. But I can pull it up. I really, really appreciate you for uploading that clip though, Jacob. That was awesome. And tell you what, I'll react to it on TikTok. I'll give it a stitch or I'll give it a duet on TikTok, and I'll give your channel a shout out too. So people give you a follow. New channel, MLG Marks. That's what I said. I'm like, if these gaming streams get really big and people really like them, then we're going to have to make a separate YouTube channel called like Midwestern Marks Gaming and upload clips there. Recovering gaming addict. Same. That's the one thing I'm worried about. Like, I don't want to get hooked again. I only let myself play one game at a time, one video game at a time. And I only allow myself to play at certain times of the day. Otherwise, I know I'm going to get hooked. I know I'm going to get addicted. I freaking was so obsessed with League of Legends as a kid. I don't play anymore, but I was a big fan of Final Fantasy when I did. Yeah, Final Fantasy's awesome. It's a great game. Story-based. How about making a channel called Midwestern Gaming? Great idea. Any real comprehensive material analysis must include the fact that the best one is objectively Final Fantasy VI. True, but not graphically. And graphics count as part of the material analysis of Final Fantasy. But like, if we were going to analyze class struggle and analyze like the story and the characters from a Marxist perspective, Final Fantasy VI is the best because it has the deepest, richest story mode. Lol, I was a Dota addict, Eddie. Yeah, Dota and League of Legends will suck your time. It's like freaking 45-minute games too. I remember my dad used to yell at me, be like, "You gotta quit playing League of Legends. Come do the dishes." And I'd be like, "I can't leave the game, Dad. We're in the middle of a game. Give me like 15, 20 minutes." Like, "What do you mean you can't leave the game? Just pause it." Like, I can't pause it. And I remember once him and my mom literally like making fun of me, like, "Oh yeah, you can't pause the game. Oh, he says he can't pause the game. Oh." I'm like, "I can't. It's online. Quit mocking me. You don't know what you're talking about." I was getting angry because I had an addiction and I should have just closed the computer and did the damn dishes. But yeah, that's my childhood. Uh, who else would love a real-time breakdown of BioShock 2 and everything they get wrong about communism? That would be really cool. I have heard that game is interesting. Never played it though. I'm also not good at first-person shooters. I'm also just bad at video games. That's why I play Japanese role-playing games. Because it's basically just like playing a story and a little bit of strategy. There's a reason I don't let myself get on any game until I finish the kitchen for the evening. That's smart. You just got to figure out rules for yourself, right? Once you figure out a structure, once you figure out rules, games are fun. Games are liberatory. Games are a reward. Right? You just have to understand how dopamine works. I've been studying neuroscience, not studying it, but listening to a lot of podcasts with Andrew Huberman lately and neuroscientists, and trying to find ways to help myself focus, help myself have more energy, help myself get all my homework done, plus stream and do all the things I need to do. This guy, Andrew Huberman, has all these tips for using science to maximize or to improve your daily life. So like one of the things I've been doing every morning is going outside and getting 20 to 30 minutes of sunlight, getting those light photons in your eyes, which is the number one thing, by the way, that you can, other than just getting more sleep, getting direct sunlight in the morning is the number one thing you can do to improve your health, to improve your sleep, to improve your focus and energy and stuff. But he also helps you understand dopamine and understand how motivation works from a neurological or chemical perspective. And yeah, you just got to, like, video games aren't necessarily a bad thing, right? They give you a lot of dopamine, but then if you get addicted to them and you just play them all the time, then you're gonna eventually you're gonna get sick of them, and your brain won't produce dopamine from playing anymore. So you don't want to overplay them. And you don't want to get addicted to them either. You don't want to play them rather than doing something that you're supposed to do, or you don't want to play so many video games that you can't get dopamine from reading or doing something productive. So you just gotta find the way to use them. Use them as a reward. Use them at the end of the night after you have your homework done. Use them after you got the kitchen clean. Slipping commie brainwashing into the gameplay to indoctrinate the youth. You get it, Bjork the pessimist. You understand. That's what we're going to do. I had to pitch this idea to Carlos hard, you guys. Carlos was like, "Well, I don't know if we should play video games. I think that maybe we should give lectures instead. I think that the other academics at in my philosophy program would look down upon these video games." And I said, "Shut the hell up. I want to play video games and talk about Marxism because that's what the kids are doing." And he was like, "Well, I found this page 372 in Hegel's Science of Logic, where he says that we should use video games to convince kids that Marxism is the way forward. So I'm okay with it. Just don't put them on our YouTube channel." That's what Carlos said, and that's what he sounds like. I can't fucking wait for him to see that. Somebody clip that out, please. Somebody clip out Eddie's Carlos impression. Oh, man. That shit was too good. The Carlos impression, LOL. I cracked myself up. Howdy from Milwaukee. Hello. Welcome to the stream, my fellow cheesehead. I spent quite a bit of time in Milwaukee. It's a beautiful place, actually. Beautiful city. gets a bad rap because they have the worst education system in the Midwest. But that's just capitalism's fault, right? Love Milwaukee. It's got nice beaches. It's not even just like the city either. Real OGs know Skies of Arcadia. Cobra Commander. I knew I loved you. Dude, I was looking for that game the other day. I'm like, they're never going to make a port of this game. Like, I've been waiting for them to release Skies of Arcadia on Switch, Nintendo Switch or something. That's a game where you play as sky pirates. It's so freaking sick. It was for the Sega Dreamcast. Have they made a port of it yet? Gosh, they need to make a port, but I feel like nobody even remembers the freaking game. And it's super expensive because they don't make it anymore. So it sucks. I love that game. Like, you play through BioShock and you're like, damn, these devs really know what's up. Then you play BioShock 2 and realize that they made the first game about the evils of crony capitalism, not real capitalism. That's too bad. I didn't even know that BioShock 2 was based on a supposedly communist world. The youth is all about the gamosphere. Exactly, dude. That's how I pitched it to Carlos for real. He wasn't actually speaking in a British accent and telling me we can't do video games. He was just like, I don't know if that fits with our other content. Our more educational, professional content. And I'm like, yeah, dude, but that's what the kids are watching, right? I'm like, that's where the kids are. I'm like, that's how we get the kids to our more professional, to our more high-end, to our more educational content. We go to where they're at. And right now they're playing video games and they're watching people play video games on Twitch, right? And if we know how to play video games, might as well do it. I mean, we know how to play video games. We know how to stream on Twitch. So might as well do those things and do the other thing we know how to do. Talk about Marxism. Because the kids are going to be watching somebody play video games anyways. So. Where's the Subway Surfers and Family Guy compilations? That's the other thing I told Carlos. I'm like, dude, go on TikTok right now. Every podcast clip or every video of some guy talking has Subway Surfers or Family Guy beneath it. A textbook issued by the USSR's Economic Institute of the Academy of Sciences. Very cool. Thank you, Jacob. I will pull that up and maybe read that for the next stream. I know Carlos really, really likes the... I was talking earlier in stream how nice it would be to look at like Vietnam or Cuba or China's curriculum for teaching Marxism, even at the most introductory basic levels. And Carlos has done that with the Soviet Union, looking at the text that they use to teach people Marxism, which a lot of Western Marxists, like Western pseudo-Zizek type Marxists, have said, the Soviet method of Marxism was mechanistic and stupid, and they didn't really understand real Marxism like us, the Westerners. But then they never engage with any Soviet Marxists or with even like the Soviet textbooks that they used to teach kids. And if you go through the textbooks, they're very good. They're very interesting. They're very close. If there might be a few things that are oversimplified, but it's just so you can, teach those things to children. It's not, and they're not necessarily oversimplified to the point of being wrong. They're just like broken down into more simplistic terms for people, but they're dismissed by these Western academics, these Western pseudo-Marxists, as not being real Marxism because they're not complicated enough. When in reality, the truth is usually simple, but elegantly simple, right? If you can't break something down to a simple level, it might not be true. Like, it reminds me of the heliocentric models that were being invented in order to try and prove that, the geocentric models. After they realized that our solar system revolves around the sun, there were all these astronomers and mathematicians who were simps to the ruling class in the church at the time, the feudal lords in the church, the landowning class, who said, no, you idiots. The earth doesn't revolve around the sun. It revolves around the earth. and let's create mathematical models to show this. And the mathematical models they created were insanely complicated, incredibly complex, all these different variables, but they were wrong, right? They were just incredibly complicated models to try and show something that's not actually true. And that's why they needed to be so complex versus the heliocentric models. The true models were more simple because the truth of the universe is, truths of the universe can usually be simplified. So similar with Marxism and the beginner Marxist textbooks in the Soviet Union that have been dismissed by Western pseudo-Marxists for not being complicated enough. Teach the mechanics of communism in action through a Minecraft server. That's a great idea. We should try and create a communist Minecraft server for all the Midwestern Marx comrades. I used to play the crap out of Minecraft. I haven't played it in who knows how long. I mean, Matt Connolly and I used to try and stream ourselves playing Minecraft a little bit before I just realized I could get on Twitch and, just talk and interact with the chat and just, do a political show or a news show. Before, I thought I had to play video games in order for people to watch or to do anything on Twitch. So we were playing Minecraft for a while, but there have been people who have made like literal communist servers where everything's owned collectively. Pretty interesting. And they've done like, some of them have gotten pretty complex, like even had like a government and, methods of distributing goods, methods of Minecraft central planning. So, yeah. You have to make one now. Oh, and thank you so much for the $5 super chat. Akea Watch. We'll really, really appreciate you for supporting our project financially. Not the first time Akea Watchel has given to Midwestern Marx, so really appreciate your generous donations. It's a 600-page textbook. Wow. Like the longest Soviet textbook I ever heard of. Yeah, I'll read it for next time, though. Don't worry. All 600 pages. Let's go. You might have more success on TikTok rather than Twitch, from what I know. Twitch focuses mainly on what's trendy, which is more multiplayer games at the moment. Okay. Well, thanks for letting me know, Christopher. That's very good to know. I got Minecraft for my kids. Now I love it, LOL. Minecraft is scary, too, and I love horror, but Minecraft makes me jump. Yeah. When you have, like, mobs come up behind you, I mean, the creepers are the worst. And, I mean, I can hear their little voice in my ear right now. There goes, not only do you die, but you lose whatever you had, or they'll blow up your structures. My friend was hosting one before it became a financial burden on her. That's cool. That's really cool. I love Sonic the Hedgehog. Me too. You might have motivated me to get Minecraft, LMAO. I'd be so down for a Minecraft server. All right, we might have to make this happen, y'all. Someone said you have to do it now. You have to make one now. Yeah, maybe I do. We'll see. We'll see. I don't know if I can handle all that, but my buddy, I always played Minecraft on my buddy's server, who was like literally a genius when it came to computers. And maybe I'll have him run it because he's so smart. He's got to be a socialist by now. I haven't talked to him too much since high school, but I guarantee you he's moved towards socialism. Drew, if you're watching this, let's run it. I make creeper farms out of spite. That's terrible. Why they make the Destiny game so hard? I've never played that game. Glad I'm catching the live stream again. Glad you could be with us, Insect Muncher. I think I should probably go to this Joe Rogan healthcare video now before I ramble for an entire 2 hours without even getting through anything that the stream is named after. We've already covered Vladimir Lenin's components of Marxism, but the other name of this stream, or the other sentence in the stream, is Joe Rogan on healthcare. Because I've been seeing all of these videos with Joe Rogan on health. You're talking about healthcare. And of course, you got one discussion about the transgender athletes, because that's a hot button issue right now. But tons of videos mostly talking about how the healthcare system is too expensive and how wasteful it is, and asking why the American healthcare system is so bad. So this is the one I saw today. I haven't watched this.
And then healthcare.
I haven't. Shoot. I've watched Rogan's podcast with Bernie, but I haven't watched a ton of his healthcare analysis because I study healthcare administration in grad school. So I spend all my work time, not including Midwestern Marx's work, because I love doing this shit. But I spend all my work time thinking about healthcare, focusing on healthcare, reading about healthcare. I don't necessarily want to consume podcasts and entertainment about healthcare when I'm not working. However, I am interested to see what he has to say about it, and to see, sort of the layman's view of healthcare, or the view of healthcare from someone like Rogan, because American healthcare is just so obviously broken. And, the more that I study it, the more I realize it's way worse than anyone even comprehends, and how the entire system needs to be wiped out and rebuilt as a socialist system, because capitalism has completely corrupted it and made it so it will literally make people unhealthy in order to make profit rather than making them healthy. It will have the opposite function that it's supposed to in many ways. But yeah, I understand this from taking a deep look at the system. But it was something that I kind of understood inherently from my experiences with the system, even before I started studying it at the graduate level. So interested here to see what Joe Rogan and whoever his guest has to say. We'll meet back after we hear from him.
And then healthcare.
Did you see the thing I posted a couple of weeks ago about this bill we got from when Jill was with our middle son in San Diego visiting a friend, and he was sick, so she had to take him to an ER, right? Like, our doctor's not there, right? Obviously we live here, so they did like regular chemistry lab on him. That's like about a $12 blood test, and gave him like, I don't know, 250 to 500 cc of IV fluid. That was it. What do you think the bill was?
$1,200.
I don't remember it because I have to look at the post I put up. I think the bill was $6,000, of which we owed $2,000.
That's insane.
That's problematic.
Talk to anybody who's not like insanely wealthy. Republican, Democrat, Independent, whatever. Ask them about their healthcare bills. Ask them if they've ever gotten overcharged for healthcare. Pretty much everybody, no matter what their political persuasion, will tell you yes, unless they're super rich or they're just the world's biggest simp for the ruling class. Or unless they're lying to themselves. Everybody has an experience getting screwed over by this system, getting overcharged, getting charged something they didn't even pay for, having insurance say they're not going to pay for something so that they can save money. The system is so broken, it impacts almost everybody's life and so many aspects of different people's lives, to the point where 60% of Americans experience medical debt at some point. So the system that's supposed to keep us healthy, that's supposed to keep us functioning well, that's supposed to treat humanity's illnesses and diseases, is doing the opposite, and it's saddling us with economic debt, this burden of debt, which makes us less healthy because it increases stress, increases anxiety, increases depression. We know that debt and other economic factors have this effect on people. They make people more unhealthy, as is written in a book by Howard Waitskin called The Second Sickness, where he says that capitalism is making everybody sick through overwork and other means, but the doctors can't treat it because they can't tell you, you're overworked. Take 2 days off of work, right? You can't tell a patient that, but you can give them pills. You can give them amphetamines or opioids that are going to numb their symptoms. So our healthcare system is tasked with the impossible task of fixing people who capitalism is making sick, but that's not even really what the healthcare system is trying to do. It's exploiting them further. It's trying to make profit off of them. So in many cases, it's saddling people with debt. It's saddling people with health issues. It's doing the opposite, the inverse of what it's supposed to do. It's making people unhealthy in order to suck more profit out of them for multi-gajillionaires who own pharmaceutical companies.
Real problem.
Yeah, it might have been more than that. $6,000 bill, our insurance somehow picked up maybe $3,500. We were stuck with $2,500. Now, juxtapose that with the following fact. Fewer than 50% of Americans today, if given 24 hours, can produce $2,500 in cash.
Jesus Christ.
So when we say healthcare is the leading cause of personal bankruptcy, it's the first, second, third, fourth, fifth. Like there's nothing else matters besides healthcare when it comes to personal bankruptcy. I mean, this does infuriate me to no end. Like I sometimes think, like, is there any other problem I would ever be interested to devoting my full attention to besides the problem I work on now? That's the only other problem that would tempt me.
You know what's interesting too? If that problem.
Here's what they're not recognizing, though, is that it's not just a problem with the healthcare system. It is so glaring in the healthcare system because it's supposed to be, or because it's public. It's a public service in even European capitalist countries. And America has the most for-profit, the most rotten, exploitative healthcare system in the world. So it looks especially bad. Some dude just flew by my house in a moped. That scared the shit out of me. But almost every industry is like this, right? Almost every industry is dominated by a monopoly, by a bunch of corporations. Almost every industry is exploitative. Almost every industry saddles people with debt. And it's capitalism, right? It's the relations of production. It's the system that turns every industry, every mode of human production, every sector of production in society into a corrupt, exploitative monstrosity, right? It's obvious in healthcare compared to the other industries, but this is from capitalism. It's from the system itself. So it's not just one issue, right? It's an issue that results from the relations of production at the core of our society, the capitalist relations of production. Fernando MP, thank you so much for the super chat. You should discuss examples of dialectics by Mao. I will write that down, my friend. And hopefully we'll get to it on the next stream because I love Mao. I love Mao's writings about dialectics. Not only do they summarize dialectics and Hegel really well and Marx really well, but they have even added new theories, have added on to the theory of dialectics with the idea of primary versus non-primary or antagonistic versus non-antagonistic contradictions. So definitely we'll consider that. Thank you so much for supporting our project financially, Fernando.
Was really tackled by our government, and they did it in an efficient way. One of the ways they would have to do it, one of the ways they would have to address.
Sorry, I forgot to say, I wanted to pull up RJ said, man, right now at this very moment, I'm putting off picking up 3 subscriptions because they're going to run me like $250. That's terrible. Terrible. Shows the barrier to medication and healthcare that exists because of the profit incentive. And meanwhile, pharmaceutical companies are making millions, billions and billions a year, which, you know, they pay out to shareholders via dividends, which are collected as profit, which go into the bank accounts of wealthy shareholders on Wall Street. And that's the reason your prescriptions cost $250. And I have a similar thing right now. I owe this, I don't know if it's a psychologist, I think is what she actually is, but the doctor I see for that type of stuff, who's been really helpful for me, I owe the clinic $180. And I haven't paid it because I haven't had the money to pay it, and I haven't wanted to ask anyone for help. And yeah, it's just then you can't see the doctor. They're just like, okay, we have to halt treatment until you pay this. They just told me that last month. They're like, it's been 6 months now that you've had this bill out, so no more treatment for you. I'm like, okay, guess I'll die. Good thing I'm not terminally ill. That would suck. But that's how 40,000 people die every year because they don't have access to health care. They just get turned away.
In order to be efficient, would be to encourage people to become metabolically healthy, which we have zero encouragement. Zero. In fact, there's actually the opposite. There's encouragement for people to have body positivity and to not be fat phobic and to not fat shame. And if And there's zero discussion about healthy diets and vitamin supplementation and the benefits of that. If they just did, like, imagine if the government was responsible for our healthcare, and they realize, hey, guys, like, we got a real problem here. We're spending too much supplementation and the benefits of that. If they just did, like, imagine if the government was responsible for our healthcare.
What the heck just happened to the screen? It went all crazy. I agree with what he's saying about doctors not talking about nutrition and stuff. I'm eating a salad right now. Nutrition and exercise and getting more sleep and going outside and getting sunlight in the morning and getting in the sauna and doing cold exposure therapy and all these different free natural treatments are some of the best ways to improve your overall health and your overall state of being and your overall happiness. But these things are very, very, very rarely preached by doctors or very, very rarely prescribed to people as treatments, right? Treatments or prescriptions are usually medication. It's usually a quick, simple fix. Go to the pharmacy and take this so your symptoms go away. Not, hey, try this diet for 2 months. Or 2 weeks, sorry, and we'll see if your symptoms start to fade, or if your quality of life is better. And not only that, but and Joe Rogan talks about fat phobia because that's what him and the other meatheads on his podcast got to talk about every single 5 minutes. They're just trying to make everybody fat and say it's okay to be fat, which sure, that's probably a part of it. And I'm sure that's coming from certain industries, but it's mostly like that capitalist food production just beats us over the head with preservatives, right? And advertises shitty food to us and leaves people without that much money in these food deserts where their only options within 2 miles are fast food and liquor stores. So it makes people unhealthy, like that book, The Second Sickness by Howard Waitskin says, capitalism and the way we produce food under capitalism makes people unhealthy. And then the doctors are supposed to treat that, right? But you can't treat it because it's a systemic problem. So you give people opioids or you give people amphetamines. You give people some kind of medication that's going to numb their symptoms and make life a little bit easier for them. But they never target the nutrition. They never target overwork. They never target sleep. I've had a doctor tell me he's not allowed to talk about nutrition. Right? He told me in secret, try this diet, try cutting out sugar. This is what I do. I'm just not allowed to talk about it because it's not a standardized treatment. I can only talk about giving people medication. And if you, in the Journal of American Socialist Studies 2, which you can get on MidwesternMarx.com to read my full write-up and essay and analysis of American healthcare, I forgot where I was going with that, actually. The Journal of American Social Studies, full write-up of American healthcare, medication to treat the symptoms. Oh, you see how involved the pharmaceutical companies are and the shareholders and these for-profit companies are in marketing new treatments to physicians and controlling medical academies, academic institutions that train doctors. And this is how the Sackler family and Purdue Pharma and all these opioid manufacturing pharmaceutical companies and shareholders got the doctors to start prescribing opioids for pain and anxiety or minor pain and anxiety, which, largely created the opioid crisis. They marketed these opioids. They marketed OxyContin, not really to consumers as much. They did, but more so to physicians, right? So physicians go to these conferences or whatever, where pharmaceutical companies are paying spokesmen to say, here's the new and greatest treatment. We're going to give people OxyContin. It takes away all their pain and symptoms and there are no side effects. And then years later, okay, it turns out it kills people, but how could we have known? And with the opioid crisis, we know that the pharmaceutical companies did know from the very beginning that the risk of addiction and overdose was high, and they lied about it. But in a lot of cases, these physicians are just getting the information straight from these conferences or straight from spokesmen, straight from the pharmaceutical industry. And then, even the medical academies, the colleges are deeply, deeply influenced by these for-profit companies as well. So every source of information, including medical information in this society, is controlled by the capitalist class, and they're going to use it to create surplus value and profit. Ooh, another super chat from Mikhail Watchell. Thank you so much. Really, really, really appreciate it. Will you cover 15-minute sites and their relation to communism? A lot of the discussion is from a capitalist perspective. By the way, it's Ashea. Oh, thank you for telling me, Ashea. I'm glad I can finally get your name correct. 15-minute sites and their relation to communism. Yeah, I can definitely react to that. I will put it in our stream plans and reaction links for next time. This Joe Rogan segment will be our last segment for today, but relation to communism or reaction to communism? Is it 15 cities or 15 sites? Just want to make sure I get the right video. Thank you so much for yet another super chat, Ashea. Really appreciate you for being here, being a comrade, and of course supporting our project financially. And I will definitely cover that video on the next stream because it sounds like a good video, and to pay you back for all the support that you've given Midwestern Marx. 15 cities. Okay, I thought so. I got the video now. I will definitely do that. I think I have the video. LOL typo. Yeah, no worries. Happens for sure. All right, let's finish this video if I can. I hope it doesn't stay green. My screen looks like puke right now. We're being jammed by the CIA again. Oh, well, I guess we're just going to listen.
If they just did, like, imagine if the government was responsible for our healthcare and they realized, hey, guys. Like,
you see how much of this neuroscientist, Andrew Huberman, I've been watching? I've been talking about this guy and talking about how to apply neuroscience in your everyday life and applying new neuroscience research to socialism. He's my only recommended video. And he did a video recently about how humans think that our motivation is currency, right? External currency, money. But really our motivation is dopamine. Our motivation is internal. Humans have internal chemicals that motivate us to develop and improve and make things better, and work together and make new advancements. So this idea that there would be no innovation or motivation under socialism, that we need money to be motivated, is so stupid. I mean, anybody can, that idea doesn't even sound correct. It sounds stupid on its face. Like, what? I can only be motivated by money? There's so many other motivations in life, and money clearly isn't what makes people happy. But, you know, they proved it now from a neuroscience perspective that humans are internally motivated.
We got a real problem here. We're spending too much money and we're losing money because what if the amount of money that they made was dependent upon the percentage of money that was spent on healthcare? Like, imagine if politicians, if their salary depended on the, like.
See, but I fear that would still get screwed up because then they would just cut costs.
And then health.
I feel like.
What if that wasn't an option though? What if, like, there was like a standard?
We have to cut costs. This is the problem, right? We're probably up to $10,000 per capita. Which is, I mean, we're actually probably more than that. We're probably $12,000, $14,000 per capita. So we're at 2 to 5x every other developed nation in what we spend on healthcare.
But why?
And we get worse outcomes. Okay, so the big reason comes down to made up numbers.
We fixed it. Woo! No, the reason's not made up number. I mean, there are a lot of invented costs, and a lot of inflated costs, but the reason is profit, right? The insurance industry doesn't have anything to do with healthcare. They're literally a middleman, a payment middleman that makes billions and billions in profit a year and spends millions and millions of dollars lobbying the government every year. That money is tacked on, unless this is what he means by made up values, that money is tacked on to every single healthcare commodity you buy, right? So when you go to the doctor and pay for treatment or medicine, you're not just paying for the treatment or medicine and the cost that it takes to deliver it. You're paying for the profits of some shareholders like Bill Gates, who happen to own shares in pharmaceutical companies and hospital companies. Hospital systems are what they are now. So every commodity can be broken down. There's the cost that it takes to produce it, the labor and the materials that went into it. But then there's also the surplus value, the profit of these ultra wealthy shareholders that you're buying, that you're paying for. So if we were to get rid of them, if we were to nationalize the system and make it public, and we didn't have to pay the salaries of these shareholders on Wall Street when we buy medicine, it would massively reduce the costs. And there's all this bureaucracy in the insurance industry essentially designed to run you in a circle, right? So the less healthcare that the insurance industry pays for, which is another core problem of our healthcare system, the less healthcare they pay for, the more money they make, right? So they want you to pay them every month. And then when you actually get sick, they want to pay for as little of your care as possible so they can maximize their own profit. So like when my brother tore both of his ACLs in wrestling and needed physical therapy, my mom had to call the insurance company 31 times before she got my brother in for physical therapy, because these administrators were just running her in a circle, trying to get her to give up and be like, fine, I'm not doing physical therapy. Or like, we'll just pay for it. We won't make the insurance company pay for it. But of course we couldn't afford that. And my brother wrestles in college, so he needed to rehab his knees. He got 4th in the country this year, by the way, after 2 torn ACLs. Shout out to him, real proud. I was in the corner. But if you nationalize the system, if you make it public, then you don't have to pay administrators to run people in a circle. And that's why every study of Medicare for All shows that it would decrease costs by millions and millions of dollars, because you wouldn't be paying for these administrative bureaucratic costs.
Look at my ER example. The blood test cost, the actual cost of ordering that blood test is $12. The bag of IV fluid is probably $38. So why do they inflate the cost so much? It's because they play a shell game with the insurance company. So they say, we negotiate different rates with different insurance companies, and we're going to build up the price enormously, but we're going to offer you a really big discount, and we're going to make you our preferred network. We're going to be your preferred network, and there's a quid pro quo here, which is the price is enormous, but you don't actually have to pay that much. We're going to discount it to you. But if somebody comes in out of network, which we were, right? We were out of network because our network is optimized around being in Austin and not in San Diego. You're going to get screwed. And of course, if you don't have insurance, forget about it. You're paying the fake money price,
especially if there's a real injury.
Oh yeah,
a real injury, you need surgery, and you're not insured. Oh my God.
Yup. Prices are artificially inflated, but I mean, I don't expect, I guess, Joe Rogan to have as systematic an analysis of the healthcare industry as I do after studying healthcare and studying Marxism for the last however many years. But yeah, it's interesting that even if people don't know the ins and outs of it, they understand that the system's broken. It's just a matter of showing them that the system's broken because capitalism's broken. Right? That the healthcare system is just, or the healthcare industry is just a reflection or a more obvious example of every industry under capitalism, which is exploitative and which is not designed to benefit the workers, not designed to produce things in a way that's rational for society as a whole, but only designed to create surplus value for shareholders and bankers, which is less than 1% of the population, and is hoarding the wealth from the rest of us. So yeah. I find Joe Rogan dangerous. He walks his audience right to our doorstep, then turns around to argue socialism is not the answer. Insidious. Definitely dangerous, but also he walks people right to that door, right? He walks people right to our door. So we just got to grab them. We got to open the door and be like, get in here, Joe Rogan followers. That's why I always, play up the, like, someone called me the communist Joe Rogan. A couple people have said that, and I've embraced that and been like, yeah, I'll be the communist Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is the most popular podcast in the US. Sometimes he walks people right to our doorstep. Like you said, he makes anti-capitalist analysis before turning them away and saying capitalism is the best system. So we have to meet people where they're at, right? People understand because of Joe Rogan that the healthcare system's messed up. Okay, here's why it's messed up. Here's how it's related to the relations of production. Here's how it's related to capitalism. Here's how Marx predicted this. Here's what we do about it. Here's how class struggle is our way out. We grab people. And that's what I mean. Like, this is a perfect example of what I mean when I say meet people where they're at. When it comes to educating people, when it comes to outreach, when it comes to recruiting people to the struggle for socialism. Meeting people where they're at, like understanding what they understand and what they don't. Right? If people are watching Joe Rogan, they understand that the healthcare system's messed up. They don't understand that it stems from the relations of production and the fact that it's a capitalist healthcare system. Nice to know. I've heard really good things. Oh, yeah, we were talking about lion's mane earlier. Lion's mane is a nootropic, like a mushroom. I recommend everybody try it. This lion's mane. I took 2 of them this morning, and then I took another one before the stream to help me stay alert. And gone 2 hours and 20 minutes now. I still feel alert, still got energy. I'm going to go coach wrestling practice later. I also did a whole bunch of things. I also went outside and got direct sunlight and light photons in my eyes right away in the morning, first thing in the morning. I also waited an hour. It's best to probably wait 2 hours, but I also waited an hour to ingest caffeine so my cortisol levels wouldn't spike in the morning and then crash. Also took a cold shower. I also saunaed this morning. I did a lot of stuff this morning, actually. Sundays are nice. You don't have to worry about getting tons of stuff done usually. But and then took lion's mane on top of that. I feel freaking amazing, dude. I feel like I could be on Adderall right now or something. I'm so focused and energetic. I've also been cutting sugar out of my diet more and more each day. So many things you can do to improve your health, man. So many things you can do before you fall back on antibiotics that are going to cook your gut's microbiome. I had a lot of long-term illness problems as a kid. And what I think happened, like we summed everything up as Lyme disease. But I think what happened was I got Lyme disease. I got bit by the deer tick. And then I got prescribed amoxicillin and doxycycline. I can't remember the other antibiotics. Amoxicillin was one of them, though. I got prescribed antibiotics, a ton of antibiotics because they couldn't figure it out. And, chronic Lyme is something that affects a lot of people in America, more and more, thousands more people each year, where the effects of Lyme disease go away originally, and then they come back and they linger in their long term. So I had all those symptoms, but what I think really happened was the antibiotics cooked my gut microbiome, which your gut literally has neurons the same way your brain does. It fires neurons and it's deeply connected to your brain, especially this part of your gut called the microbiome, which you can kill by eating crappy and by eating tons of antibiotics, and which you can strengthen and build up by eating things like sauerkraut, yogurt, and just eating healthy and non-processed foods in general. And what I think happened was the antibiotics cooked my gut's microbiome. It gave me all these physical and mental problems growing up, which I couldn't ever connect them, right? I always thought the problems going on in my head were fake. And that's what a lot of the mainstream doctors will say. They think that chronic Lyme is fake. They think all these 500,000 people in America suffering with chronic Lyme symptoms are all faking it. I mean, idiotic. I hate any doctor, any physician who says that is a simp to the corporations who dominate our healthcare system and healthcare research. But anyways, I'm pretty passionate about it because obviously this affected me directly. But the way to treat it is to have a more holistic understanding, right? I've had more success treating the chronic Lyme symptoms just doing my own thing, and taking a comprehensive approach to my own health, right? Holistic approach, eating healthier, exercising more, saunaing, getting cold exposure, getting sunlight in the morning, getting my circadian rhythm and my sleep cycle on track. Like, these are the things that have helped me. And the more that I get my gut in order, the more my brain feels in order. The more my brain feels in order, the more my gut feels in order. Our mind and our body are connected. There's a dialectic between the two. They're deeply interconnected, and we're interconnected with the earth through our activities and the things that we do. So the things that we do affect our health. The things that we eat affect our health. How we interact with nature affects our health. And, like I said, going outside and getting direct sunlight is the number one thing you can do. It can be the cornerstone of improving your health. It's the number one thing you can do to improve your health for free. So all of these things have an effect, and, the modern profit-based healthcare system just breaks healthcare down to, pills. If you got an illness, there's an imbalance in you, take this pill. You have symptoms, take this pill and feel better. If we don't have a pill that can fix you, right? Like these people suffering with chronic Lyme, we're not going to try and build up your gut's microbiome. We're not going to do saunas. We're not going to, do all these different natural things to try and bring back your health. We're going to give you a pill. And if that doesn't work, we're going to say it's fake. Right? Like I've written, and I've been meaning to publish this. I wrote an academic peer-reviewed paper on Lyme disease, a literature review of everything that's been written about chronic Lyme, and basically attacked these physicians and these corporations trying to argue that it's fake. Right? The only reason they say it's fake is because they don't have a pill that takes it away immediately. So there's no way to profit off the treatment for chronic Lyme. Yeah. Sorry, I was going off about that. I had chronic Lyme as a kid, and when I researched it as an adult in healthcare administration, I was able to identify like 20 different things that have made me feel better, that have made me healthy and happy and not depressed like I was as a child. But when I was a child, these freaking medical doctors were telling me and other people with Lyme disease our symptoms are fake and shit just because they didn't have any way to fix it. If they wouldn't have been so arrogant and convinced that, pills are the only way to heal illnesses, and they would have looked into nutrition and exercise and sauna and sunlight and all these things, even though, back then the research that exists now probably wasn't out about all these things. But if they would have done that and actually did their job instead of being arrogant, they could have made me healthy when I was a kid, and they could have made my childhood less shitty and depressing. But then maybe I wouldn't have become a socialist yelling about this stuff online. So, all right, y'all. Well, I'm going to call it a day for the stream. It's been a great stream, 2.5 hours. Thank you for all the super chats. Thank you to all the moderators. Thank you for all the super stickers. Thank you to everyone who supports our project financially and non-financially. Make sure to like, share, comment, subscribe, and follow if you haven't. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. You can support us on Patreon. That's messed up. Sorry I happened to you, Eddie. Don't worry about it, Zero Deca. It is messed up, but that's why I'm studying healthcare administration now. That whole experience is why I'm a socialist or communist now. It's what helped me see that the healthcare system is messed up, which then, ultimately, that I'm sure that long-term illness as a kid laid the foundation for what I'm doing today. Right? It helped me realize how messed up this system is. And, now I've dedicated my life to changing it so no kid is treated the same way I was and has to deal with that crap. And, every kid has an opportunity to flourish and be healthy and happy because that kind of world is possible, man. That kind of world where we do things collectively, where we develop ourselves, where we have community, right? Where the main focus in our society is building each other up and human development, right? A society based on humanity, not a society based on capital. That is possible. It is so possible. And we can get there. We're closer than we think. Right? All it's going to take is education and organization. So thank you all for hanging out again. Much love. Let me know in the comments if you have any recommendations any constructive criticism, anything you'd like to see from us, any videos you'd like us to react to, or any books or pamphlets you'd like us to read. Either way, much love to you all. Solidarity. See ya. Seriously, I know cult of personality is not your style, but the inclusion of Joe Rogan in some of these recent thumbnails will make your video easier to share. Yeah, I was going to do that, and then I couldn't find any good free pictures of Joe Rogan. But I'll find one when I clip this highlight and upload it. So thank you for the advice, Deep Desert. This is what I mean by constructive criticism. Good job on the Joe Rogan podcast. Thank you, Kim Yo Jong. All right. Solidarity, everyone. Much love.